Cults can be truly terrifying in the horror movie genre, and with Knock at the Cabin's new release by M. Night Shyamalan, I thought I would round up my top picks for best horror movies with fanatical cults. Let's roll it. The Wicker Man, released in 1973. You can't have a horror movie list about cults without including The Wicker Man. While I do have a special place in my heart for the Nicolas Cage version.
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes!
The 1973 version of the film is the grandfather of the subgenre. As one of the best performances of Christopher Lee, he was never more striking than when he was playing Lord Summerisle, the leader of the movie's cult. The Wicker Man's atmosphere is unmatched too, as the madness gradually unfolds in front of us to show the cult's use of human sacrifice to bring prosperity to their isolated island community. From the amazing soundtrack to the unforgettable final scenes of the film where they consume their last victim, the movie undoubtedly has a huge influence that is continuing to be seen today in horror films involving cults and other movies on this list. For example, fun horror fact, this was actually a box office failure and they drastically re-edited it in the early 2000s, and thankfully they did, because it's a highly respected film classic involving cults.
You know you were her favorite, right? Even when you were a little baby, she wouldn't let me feed you because she needed to feed you.
Hereditary, released in 2018, one of the best horror movies to come out in years. Hereditary is ultimately the story of a family who is doomed to the ways of a terrifying cult. What's interesting is the storyline asks the question, are we condemned to the decisions of our ancestors and our family? Ari Aster's direction is masterfully crafted in pacing, horrifying imagery, and also casting. While Midsommar lays out its intentions from the start, Hereditary kind of holds back a little bit on the reveal of the cult for much of the film, and it slowly unfolds. What starts as a somber family drama, and by the way, Toni Collette gives one of the best performances of her career as the mother in this film. Eventually, Hereditary explodes into a phenomenal supernatural horror movie that's centered around a demon-worshipping cult. One of the best parts of the film is the fact that there are Easter eggs all over the movie up to the ultimate reveal, so if you go back and watch it when you know the plot, you'll catch things that you didn't catch before. I will warn you though, this is a very disturbing watch for new horror fans. It is not for the faint of heart. Some of the scenes are true nightmare fuel, but this is a masterpiece in horror. If you want to see one of the best modern films on this list, this is it.
Rosemary, go back to bed. You know you're not supposed to be up and around.
Is the mother? Rosemary.
Shut up.
Rosemary.
Shut up, you're in Dubrovnik. I don't hear you.
Rosemary's Baby, released in 1969. It's amazing how much this particular movie holds up today in creepiness, atmosphere, cinematography, and score. Roman Polanski's masterpiece set the tone for many cultist horror films, in particular with the way that he holds back of the reveal of the cult and steadily using that build of mystery and paranoia to make us question whether we know what's happening. Mia Farrow plays a pregnant woman who moves into a new apartment with her husband, and unfortunately she realizes that her neighbors are not who they appear to be. The plot unfolds to show that Rosemary's husband has made a deal with an evil force to trade for success in his acting career. He freely paid the price using his wife as a surrogate mother for something demonic. Not a nice guy. Farrow's performance and Polanski's masterful direction and the fantastic unsettling atmosphere throughout the film make a highly worshipped cult classic, unmissable in the genre. Martyrs, released in 2008. This is one of the most brutal and difficult to watch horror films on this list. To be honest, I probably will never watch this film again because of some of the scenes in it being too much for me, but that doesn't make it any less of a masterfully crafted horror film. The 2000s was a great decade for French horror in particular, and Martyrs was one of the most shocking films to emerge during that time period. The movie primarily is split into two acts. The first is a fairly straightforward but fascinating home invasion thriller where a pair of women enter what seems to be just a normal suburban house and engage with the family inside. What follows though in the second half of the film is very unexpected, as we learn that one of the women was actually held prisoner there as a child, while the normal family was actually just a front for an insane cult that has some very disturbing intentions. Martyrs goes into some pretty extreme places with a lot of intense borderline torture scenes. It is definitely not for everyone, but it is extremely well done and a thought-provoking movie. Skip the American version though, it's really not that good.
So glad you're here. We've got a lot to talk about. So much to celebrate tonight.
The Invitation, released in 2015, this was one of the most surprising and well done modern horror films that does a fantastic job revealing what's happening to the viewer slowly. What's supposed to be a night of just reconnecting with some old friends at a very awkward dinner party turns into an uncomfortable ensemble drama. The movie does a phenomenal job highlighting how the group of friends are truly estranged while trying to reconnect during the dinner. It is a slow burn, and as the plot unfolds, they start to question exactly why have they been assembled for this social night. A mysterious other friend that was invited to the party ends up becoming more and more involved in the picture, and let's say things get real dark as he gets more involved. The Invitation is very much a LA lifestyle mockery, as it is a horror movie, and takes the idea of a self-help cult to a horrifying conclusion. There's an awesome tone throughout the movie that walks the line between dark laughs and also unbearable social situations, and that ending is immensely satisfying. Definitely check this one out.
His fist closed around the serpent's eye.
Mandy, released in 2018. Nicolas Cage has been on quite a tear, acting in some seriously awesome horror films. Color Out of Space was one of my most recent favorites. What Mandy ultimately is a psychedelic revenge epic with a fantastic score, unbelievably well done practical effects, and an absolutely bananas plot. The horror film follows the story of an evil cult. They call themselves the Children of the New Dawn. Initially, they seem like a bunch of Manson wannabe types, taking a lot of drugs and listening to some really shitty folk music, but after some insane visuals, the Black Skulls arrive. They are a demonic biker gang that was summoned by the cult via a magic flute called the Horn of Abraxas. I love this movie so much. The plot ultimately follows the kidnapping of Nick Cage's wife, Mandy, and what follows is one of the best stories in modern horror as Nick Cage's character battles this Cenobite-looking biker gang in just a pure revenge tale. Really awesome film, not to be missed.
This is to me, old sinner. Come on in.
Red State, released in 2011. Religious cults absolutely terrify me, by the way. One of the more realistic movies to explore this particular concept in a way that really got under my skin was Kevin Smith's Red State. While many of the cults on this particular list are ultimately just pretty eccentric and out there, the religious sect in Kevin Smith's Red State is based on a very real Westboro Baptist church and shows the dangers of unchecked religious hysteria. This movie has all the DNA of a Kevin Smith film and starts like a more unconventional Kevin Smith comedy. Basically, it starts out as a trio of sex-obsessed teenagers follow an ad for a hookup with an older woman, and soon they find themselves prisoners of an insane preacher who believes that he is on Earth to perform God's bloodthirsty moral crusade. Michael Park is outstanding in this movie as the demented preacher, and John Goodman plays a morally torn ATF agent that's dispatched to deal with these gun-obsessed cult members. Some awesome action in this movie, very gory, but man is it terrifying.
You have to forgive me, Samantha, because I've not been completely honest.
We're from the desert, you know.
You see, we actually don't have a child.
House of the Devil, released in 2009. Fans of the recent T. West films like Pearl and X should know that he put out a fantastic horror film in 2009 by the name of House of the Devil. The satanic panic scare in the 1980s highly influenced this movie, and the film explores the concept extremely effectively. A young woman named Samantha takes a house-sitting job for a seemingly normal couple who go out during the evening, leaving the husband's elderly mother upstairs. While it's no surprise, especially by the title of the film, that the couple are a part of a satanic cult, the strength of this movie is in its meticulous, slow burn. T. West squeezes every single freaking drop of tension from Samantha's situation as she starts to suspect that something is very wrong. It's the sort of old school horror that you kind of don't really get nowadays, and it relies much more on atmosphere and unease and slow burn than just blowout gore, splatterfest, and jump scares. T. West also did another cult film in 2013 called The Sacrament, but honestly that was not as good. If you're looking for a great slow burn horror that's in the cult vibe, kind of like Rosemary's Baby but newer, this is a great pick.
I can see it all before me.
The Void, released in 2016. If you love practical effects like John Carpenter's The Thing and you dig Lovecraftian horror vibes, this is the perfect freaking movie for you. The Void is a masterfully crafted modern indie horror hit that combines cultist scares with gore-drenched monster horror to a pleasantly weird and amazingly well done effect. A group of people are trapped inside an isolated hospital by a strange cult who know that there is a gateway to another dimension that's in the basement. The directors of the film throw all kinds of tentacle Lovecraftian madness at us as viewers, but the movie's scariest aspect of the film by far remains the cult. These silent figures that are dressed in white robes with the triangle on the hood, nightmare fuel. Gives me chills thinking about it, and one of the scariest parts of the movie is when they slowly encroach on the hospital. Some gnarly kill scenes in this film with wild splatter and gore practical effects. If you loved The Thing, The Void is a must-watch.
Christian says that you've got some special thing planned.
Yeah, it's like a crazy 9-day festival. It only happens every 90 years.
Midsommar, released in 2019. This movie blew my mind because of the contrast between the gorgeous, lush colored landscapes against purely terrifying gore. This is honestly every tourist's nightmare visiting another country. The movie is about a closed community finding a new member when they convince a grieving woman, played by Florence Pugh, to perform vicious rituals. Midsommar is so rich in narrative that it remains weighty and thought-provoking in explorations of trauma. Every frame of Midsommar is filled with small details that reference and respects pagan culture in a lot of ways. The movie is deeply distressing and challenges even the bravest horror fiends to keep our eyes open throughout Midsommar's runtime. It takes us through a multicolored experience of high contrast, chilling score, and even just blood-soaked scenes. I've seen some horror fans divided on this film, but it absolutely nails the cult horror vibe in modern horror.
Rob would have loved this place. He's a good man. The best of us.
The Ritual, released in 2017. This movie surprised the hell out of me with how good it was. The plot follows a group of friends that go on a hiking adventure and they decide to take a shortcut through an unmarked forest. The premise of David Bruckner's The Ritual sounds like the plot of an average horror story, but the movie is far from another tale of just insignificant characters getting lost in the woods. The movie follows a group of friends making their trip together to celebrate a memory of a dead friend who was murdered before that they could take another trip. An unexpected detour happens in the film due to one of the hikers, and the story falls into pure terror as the group gets lost in the woods and they are tormented by a strange creature and a cult that worships the monster. The creature has some supernatural powers that terrorize the hikers, and I won't spoil it for you, but it explores some gruesome and emotional territories. The monster in The Ritual definitely deserves some serious praise too for being one of the scariest creatures in a modern horror film.
Families throughout history have been chosen to make this decision. Your family must choose to willingly sacrifice one of the three of you to prevent the apocalypse.
Knock at the Cabin, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. I just got back from seeing this movie, and all I have to say is, wow, is it a wild ride. Knock at the Cabin absolutely belongs on this list because it is a super creepy horror film that asks us that question of, can you be influenced by cult mentality, and are you susceptible to that kind of behavior? Four people who crash the vacation of a super adorable family and a little girl who absolutely stole my heart. What seems to be four cultists who show up and say that the universe essentially has a question to ask, and are you willing to answer that question? I will say that I very much enjoyed the film, and I do think that you should go see it. If you have a significant other, I think it's also important that you go see it with them, because that's going to be some really interesting conversation when you leave the theater. I'm not sure what I would do in the situation. There is a lot going on in the film, and it makes you ask that question of, can you really trust what's happening in front of you at any point? M. Night Shyamalan does have a cameo in this film. He's known to do that. It's a little funny how he does it. I will say that I was a tad disappointed in the ending, but I don't know how they could have done it any differently. I'm not sure what I would do in this situation, and I think I'm going to be thinking about this movie for a while. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out in theaters. It's a lot of fun on the big screen. Check this list out if you want to see my top list for my favorite body horror films. Check out this top list for my favorite horror movies with creepy dolls. Let me know in the comments your favorite cult horror film. I'll scare you guys next time.